Well, good morning and happy Monday to the YouTube world. Thought I'd do a little discussion this morning about one of the realities of off-grid life. You probably can hear a little murmur in the background. That little murmur is my 1,000-watt inverter generator running. We've had a couple of rainy days without a lot of wind. Certainly no solar energy coming in for the last 2 days. And one of the realities of living unplugged, off-grid as it were, is that there are certain energy demands that are relatively constant. Refrigeration probably being the largest. I think I've talked about that a little bit. Right now I'm running a small freezer and a built-in refrigeration system. Lights aren't such a load anymore now that they're all LED, but they're still a consideration. Pumps are a big one. Pressure water, bilge pumps, shower sump pump, that sort of thing. Anyway, these are all minimally negotiable energy demands. So if you have a time period where you're not getting good alternate energy intake, if you're not harvesting enough solar and wind power, you got to make up the deficit, and that's just the reality of the situation. So for me, that's done with a little air-cooled 1,000-watt generator. These are controversial. They're much hated in a lot of anchorages, and I do recommend, if you're going to go this route, that you be hyper conscious that you're not disturbing a quiet anchorage. Kind of use it in the appropriate setting. Other than that, there's a simple way to keep everything running. Certainly if you have a bigger boat and an installed generator, that's the ultimate way of doing this, but there are certain advantages to this level of simplicity. Now the 1,000-watt generator is on the small side, but I have done that intentionally. I've sized my battery charger and my water heater element so that they will both run on 1,000 watts of power, which means that I can get hot water and charge my battery bank at the same time if I choose to. That was a deliberate choice, and that's entirely personal. To me, the 25 to 30 pound weight of the 1,000-watt generator, which would, by the way, double if I went to 2,000, makes it worth the compromise in terms of the output. Works for me. So today I want to show you that generator. I want to show you a few hacks. I'm going to go through just a really quick service that I have to do on this a couple times a year. Okay, so this is the Generac GP1200 inverter generator. This is essentially a copy of the other generator I have, which is a Honda EU1000i. The Honda is without a doubt the better of the two. The reason I have this Generac is when I went to replace my Honda 3 years ago, I learned that a change had taken place in the industry, and these small generators are now only available with a built-in carbon monoxide detector. Now, you might think, well, why would you object so strongly to a carbon monoxide detector? That's the sort of thing that can interfere with Darwin and keep someone from running this generator in their house and dying. Yeah, you're right. But then consider that there is no carbon monoxide detector yet created with a sensor cell that lasts more than 10 years. The Honda generator that I was looking to augment, I won't say replace, it still runs, it just was getting a little long in the tooth, and I decided it was time to put it into the reserve fleet. That Honda generator was well over 10 years old. So the first thing I did, which I will do with any new equipment, is I went online and I looked up how to replace the CO sensor in the new Honda generator, and I found nothing. Nothing listed for service, nothing listed for parts. So that told me right away that part of this new safety feature, and this is often the case, I'm afraid to say that often safety is packaged, bundled, and sold to us with an insidious side order of planned obsolescence. So you might say, well, 10 years is a good run. That's a long time to expect from this small portable equipment. And my counter to that is, where will you be when that 10-year clock strikes its last? I don't want a generator that is going to give up on a calendar. I want serviceable equipment. Now, I'm learning more recently through YouTube University that people are figuring out how to bypass these built-in carbon monoxide sensors and keep their generator running beyond the life of that particular component. I'm not recommending you do that, but I will say that there's very little benefit to the carbon monoxide detector that keeps you alive being out here on the generator. You need that to be where you are, where you live, where you sleep. And I think it's a relatively small portion of society that thinks that where they live and where they sleep should be next to where this is running. Anyway, I digress. So this little generator has been pretty good. As I mentioned, one of the things I'll do is I will go online and I will look at servicing equipment before I buy it. I will look to see if I can buy a carburetor, for example. I don't want a generator that only lasts the life of one carburetor, even though I go to great efforts to get the ethanol out of my fuel. We live in an era where carburetors are a fairly disposable item, unfortunately. So the Generac ticked that box, and it is as serviceable as the Honda, since it's basically a clone. I'll show that in a minute. But it also they also offer for sale replacement carburetors, so I did pick up a spare. So you know, it's a relatively small, simple solution. Are they noisy? Well, yes. Relatively speaking, to a built-in, well-muffled generator, I guess they are. But the 1000, I will say, is a fairly quiet unit, and there isn't much difference between the Generac model and the Honda in that regard. So a very important aspect is how you tie the generator into your boat's electrical system. You need a way to connect the generator that's appropriate to its amperage. So what you've got here is, this is actually a trolling motor battery charger inlet that's marketed by Marinco, set up for 15 amp plug. What I'm using for a cord is an appliance heavy duty cord. It's short. It's rated for well more than the 1000 watts that this unit can produce. And then the generator connection inside the boat is done via this slide bar selector switch. This is basically just a switch that only allows one source of AC power to be tied into the to the main breaker panel at a time. So you select your source. My inverter, for example, could be switched on, and then the generator or the shore power cannot be switched on. So this is a way of protecting you against connecting two 120 volt sources to the same circuit, which is a dangerous situation. You never want to do that. So this allows a safe interconnection between the generator and the panel. Now I will say also that at the back of the boat, just inside of where those three shore power connections are, there is a junction box that has 3 circuit breakers, a 15 amp circuit breaker for the generator, and a 30 amp for each of the two shore powers. That relates to an ABYC requirement that limits the length between the breaker on the boat and the shore power connection to, I believe it's 10 feet. Don't quote me on it, but anyway, you do want circuit protection close to where your power comes into the boat. So one of the issues that I had for many years with this outside small portable generator was very often when there's no wind and there's no sun, it's raining. Now, as you can see on the front of this unit, there are an awful lot of things that exposure to weather isn't going to be beneficial. They do a certain amount of weatherproofing with rubber covers, but essentially this unit really does not want to live outside in the rain. It would work for a while, but you would greatly increase your maintenance and reduce your lifespan. So what I came up with was this sort of another Rube Goldberg, a little rain hood. This is basically a canvas cover that's open on the sides. So it's it has half sides, a little ventilation screen on the front, cover on top. Essentially, this allows me to run the generator in the rain without it getting soaking wet. But the key here was to allow ventilation. You have to allow the exhaust to get out the back, which it does because it's open. And you have to allow ventilation through the sides where it pulls in, and the front. So this was sort of a bit of a farm fix. It's really nothing more than a canvas cover that I've used some light fiberglass batten to hold in shape. So the thing about owning any kind of machinery is that it's sort of pointless if you don't maintain it. If you want your machinery to take care of you, you have to take care of your machinery. So what we're going to do today is 2 or 3 times a year, depending on how many hours of runtime I do, need to give this some fresh oil. Now, these little motors, like lawnmowers or other similar equipment, they use what's called a splash lubrication system. So there's no pressurized oil system, but they do still need an oil change in order to keep running well. It's a pretty simple procedure. The amount of oil involved is ridiculously small. And by the way, before I do this, I'll point out that this entire carburetor setup is absolutely identical to the Honda. I'd almost be surprised if they didn't fit one to the other, but to do carburetor maintenance and service, you're just removing these 2 nuts and the whole carburetor slides off. It's a very easy to service setup, and it's one of the reasons that I was willing to give the Generac a try instead of the Honda. So the oil change is very simple, although somewhat messy. You remove the oil dipstick and plug. Get yourself a container, some rags, because there is going to be some spillage. And you just tip the unit on its side. Make sure the fuel vent is closed. Now I like to do this after the unit has run, so that this oil that's coming out is warm. We're using 1530 or 1030 weight oil, which is not tremendously viscous oil, so it's not absolutely essential, but it's helpful. One thing I did not do that I think I would if I were buying a new unit, they now make these pretty simple little hour clocks that can be connected to the ignition system. Even some of them that just sense vibration and keep track of run hours. That would be a helpful way of making this maintenance a little bit more scheduled. I haven't done that on this unit, so I just kind of go by sense of, well, guess more than anything, I suppose. Okay, so that's your total quantity of oil. I don't remember what the numbers are on that, but it's not much. You can see it's fairly dirty though. These little units do dirty up their oil, and dirty oil does not do you any favors for longevity. You probably have figured out by now that my personal take on saving the world is that we make things that last a long time, and we don't have to make them as often, rather than, well, disposable stuff. So this is a handy little bottle that came with one of these generators. I don't know if it was this one or another, but it makes it fairly easy to transfer the oil in. I'm using, yeah, it's 1030. I'm using a full synthetic on this unit because I know the gaskets that it was made with can handle synthetic oil. It's something you always want to be mindful of. These generators do have a low oil sensor, and it'll shut the engine off pretty quick. I find that I do have to check the oil periodically. I won't say it burns a lot of oil, but they do go through. There is a bit of oil consumption through evaporation over the course of 6 months or so. And what will happen is your generator will be purring along one day and it'll just quit, like suddenly, sudden death, and you'll be wondering why. It's probably the low oil cutoff. Anyway, it's the first thing to check. So you can use the plug dipstick to check the oil, but frankly you can just use your eyes because you can see the oil rising up into the threaded receptacle there. And because the generator is tilted a bit away from me, I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. You never want to over oil, but honestly with these little lawnmower engines, it's almost impossible to do because if you put too much oil in before you got the cap on, it would just be spilling right back out. Okay, probably not showing on camera, but as the generator comes back to level, the oil is just about at the top of the fill opening. That's all there is to it. All right, well, fresh clean oil. Last thing we do here is give it a short run and get all that clean oil circulated through the bearings and the cylinder. And one more side note on this, if you're concerned about a gasoline source piece of equipment on board, so am I. The rule here is that, well, I carry gasoline for my small outboards and for this generator, but it all gets carried above deck. And my one suggestion there is that these plastic gas cans are pretty reliable if you keep them out of the sun. So the time, if you can do it, or cost, or creativeness, you just want to use an old pillowcase to cover your gas can, if it lives on deck as this one does, is always a worthwhile investment. Keep the sun off the plastic. Well, that's it for today's semi-Captain Obvious video, I guess. You know, these small things that make a big difference in lifestyle, I think, are part of what I want to share on this channel. There are a lot of ways to do things, and certainly I'm not advocating this is the best way, but it's somewhere in between being completely reliant on alternate energy, which means having alternate expectations for that energy. Refrigeration is not an alternate expectation. Heat, which will soon be a factor, running the furnace. These are things that are going to require a set amount of power, and it's got to come from somewhere. So I think of myself as an energy realist, and nothing will drive that point home more than living unplugged and off grid like this. You're living out of your energy savings, and you have to replenish them. So this little generator has been a big help to doing that. So thanks for stopping by, and hope you enjoyed the show here, and please like and comment, and feel free to ask questions or open up discussion. Thanks.